Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. Brian and I would like to talk to you about the recent events that we attended, Zoho Balance in Salt Lake City and Zoho SMZ in San Antonio. Two completely different events, but I really think worthwhile. So the Zoho Balance was really conceived by Val Steed and Nathan and others of the Zoho team to introduce accounting consultants to the Zoho platform. And as it turns out, Brian was invited and I was invited as well. I not only attended, but, was able to speak on a panel. And the balance piece, gave us the opportunity to speak with influencers of all kinds, almost anybody that you could recognize that had long-term contacts in the profession was there. I was able to talk directly with Siva and Prashant, the primary decision makers on the accounting platforms in Zoho. And, along the way, the conversations at the event were very strong. I was really quite surprised how many accountants did not know about the Zoho platform, didn't understand anything about the company, the strategy. And, today with Zoho's number of businesses, in the million plus range, and the number of seats, customers in the 130 million range, most people are just surprised when they learn about Zoho. So, Brian, I know you attended both events as well, so we did spend a good bit of that week together. But what observations would you have on Zoho Balance?
Yeah, so just kind of put a lid on Zoho Balance. I think it was really more of a introduction of the Zoho Finance platform, and again, they built it out pretty nicely. We'll talk more about it a little bit later, but again, it's got Zoho Expense, Zoho Inventory, Zoho. We have books, we have invoice, we have a payments platform, we have there's just literally a subscription billing platform. There's literally a whole suite of tools that's just the finance suite. And I think we've actually got a separate slide on that. But I think this was really more packaged as going after accounting influencers and presenting the Zoho value proposition to them. We've heard a lot of frustration from QuickBooks Pro advisors at the treatment they've received from Intuit of late of, the taking back of discounts and the just double-digit annual price increases on desktop, and then just not selling desktop anymore. And then, pretty substantial price increases on online as well. So, I think that generally Zoho is in a good place, as is Xero and as is FreshBooks, to come in as alternatives to QuickBooks Online.
Yeah. So the Zoho Balance event, I think, will cause you to hear more about Zoho from whatever influencers you might be following. Because again, I was amazed how many people were in the room. Just about everybody who was anybody in the profession.
Clayton Oates came over from Australia for it.
Yeah. And, bottom line was very few people were clued up. But I think it's probably from a product perspective, Brian, good that we turned our attention to SMZ, which was the small business version that Zoho produced. Now, you and I have been fortunate enough to go to Zoho's influencer events for some time, and I know you've been to one earlier in the year, but the SMZ was conceived by Sandy Lowe and the management team. In fact, we had one of the founders, Tony Thomas, start us off in San Antonio with presentation. But this was focused around small business users and influencers. And so, Brian, again, was there, and we were at a very nice hotel in San Antonio. But, Sandy Lowe basically tried to frame what they were accomplishing with this particular event. And I think did a pretty good job. Now, bottom line on small businesses is we're going to talk to you about 5 or 6 announcements that they made in San Antonio or new updates to products. But if you are a small business centric accounting firm or a small business, there are some products that we have talked about in prior podcasts and in prior accounting lab, like Zoho Invoice. But for example, Begin is a small CRM product that can be used by startups. And the idea is that you can start small with Zoho products like Begin and convert to their larger version like Zoho CRM.
Yeah. So think of Begin as roughly comparable to a Lunchables, where Zoho CRM would be a 3-course lunch. So the thing about Begin is it doesn't require as much customization, and it's more set to work out of the box as opposed to having to set up workflows and steps and all kinds of other things like you do in a traditional CRM.
Yeah, but it is not incapable. It's a very capable platform with very little configuration. It's much stronger than the old contact managers like Act and Goldmine and all those. And, other pieces in their platform are designed to start small, like Zoho Mail, and grow up into Workplace. Now, we'll talk about this growth path because, remember, this was a small business event. And if you're doing business development on startups, which there are going to continue to be a lot of startups right now, these platforms may well help you with that client base. And
I do want to say that Zoho Invoice is free for all users. So if you have somebody that's self-employed, like my lawn lady that's going to be coming later today, hopefully we'll get the recording done before she comes here. But if you have somebody that just needs to do basic billing so you can have completeness of revenue, Invoice is free, and there's a seamless upgrade path into Books, which is their full GL package.
And we'll also learn in today's podcast that they have another complete platform called Solo, which is also free. So there is a high probability that your clients could start on Invoice or Solo using Start. And again, the whole thing here will unfold. But Zoho has begun to think about all their various modules as systems. They have 50 plus modules, and we heard about that in both Salt Lake and San Antonio. And the focus is around the 3 needs of every business: serving customers, empowering employees, and running operations. And in a prior accounting technology lab, we talked about the 50-state payroll that Zoho now has, for example. But the concept of serving marketing, sales, and support on the customer side, and all of the modules that can go on that, which can be bought individually or used individually or bought in suites, is a deal. And it turns out that besides the customer-facing products, they also have the employee-facing products. And the employee-facing products are for communications and collaborations and business intelligence. And then finally, the operations products include their HR products, their finance products like Books, and other inventory and commerce products, and we'll be talking about commerce here a little bit later. So you can buy these individual modules in suites, or you can buy them all in one. So if you start thinking about it as kind of a front office operation, Zoho CRM Plus and Marketing Plus and Service Plus could be the way you buy bundles. Collaboration, it would be Workplace or Project Plus, and the back office is Finance Plus or People Plus, or you can simply choose to, get everything together in a product called Zoho One, which is what we have been using in our K2, business for some time. So we like to recommend Zoho One, but it is also quite clear to us that you can start small and grow. Zoho did tell us that once people get to 2 modules on their system, they frequently update to Zoho One just to get everything. And that's a pretty common strategy. The other significant announcement that Zoho made in San Antonio was the upgrades for their Zoho Zia the Zoho Intelligent Agent, their AI for small business. And this ZIA is actually optimized for business as a proprietary LLM. They are doing contextual integrated AI, and some of the demonstrations here were quite good. They also have produced some AI agents and used them across a variety of the platforms. So, this evolution really got me thinking again that it was time for us to update you on some of the goings on with Zoho. So I want to turn our attention, though, to a larger product, Zoho Commerce. And what we watched demonstrated by Zoho was an end-to-end onboarding process. Now, we're not going to go into all the technical details. I was so doggone impressed with the, simplified domain name acquisition, email setup, e-commerce setup along the way that I believe that you could set up a complete business with integrated inventory in a matter of a few hours. And why do I think that's the case? Because I watched them demonstrate this doggone thing in a matter of a few minutes, which is also pretty amazing. But on the commerce side, they have a full-scale e-commerce integrated storefront that integrates all the way back to the inventory items. And they're improving their capabilities to compete against the likes of Shopify with this particular platform. And the inventory is pulled in real time from the back end. So in effect, if you can get inventory items, including services set up in the system, you can enable a complete shopping cart enabled business to business or business to consumer environment. And they do handle the whole end-to-end workflow process from orders and payments to shipping and delivery tracking. So Brian, you got to see this commerce platform demonstrated as well. What would you want our listeners to know about that?
Well, it also can be used as kind of a point of sale. It's a little more rudimentary as a point of sale, but it fits there. They really have redone the whole user experience in this to make it a much easier product to work with. So I'm quite excited about that. And I think I think as we get into this world we live in where people want to buy things online and pick them up at the store, this is the reality of what a lot of small businesses need so that people can, book appointments or book, services or book things online and then electronically pay for them and then have them just happen in the background.
Yeah. So Zoho did disclose some of the strategies like working towards more sophisticated point of sale and verticalizing more. But we have talked in the past about Zoho being a privately held company that's been profitable since inception. They've been around about 30 years at this point. And so they have a higher security profile than just about any other vendor in the market. But one of the things that they really promoted was their idea of, supporting small businesses. So I've already called out a product called Zoho Solo. Its really proper name is actually Solo for Solopreneurs, is Solo One. And, one of the things that may not be obvious to you is there are loosely 70 million freelancers in the United States and about 1.6 billion freelancers worldwide. And we've watched the Census Bureau numbers here in the U.S. for decades, without exaggeration there. And we believe there's loosely 34 million businesses in the U.S., 28 million which don't have an employee. So, when we start thinking about these businesses and the startups that are out there, there's a lot of opportunity for you if you can help startups take off and grow. Now, Solo has many features, but first I'm just going to call again, Solo is free. So this is, all of these things that a user can do in their Solo account. They can manage tasks and contacts. They can do income management, expense management. They've got tax management capabilities and reporting and security. Really, it's enough to do everything that a small business needs to do to manage day-to-day functionality. And, the basis of this is different modules, but they've all been glued together into a single user experience. So Brian, when you saw the demonstration on Solo, is there any particular things that you might call out?
Well, I mean, if you think about Zoho One as being designed for enterprises, and then and Zoho Solo is really designed for, again, the self-employed people. And so it's really a very much stripped down version of the Zoho suite, not necessarily in functionality, but in complexity. So it's designed to make it easy to run everything off of a mobile app and to just go forward with it. But it's got tasks and contacts and income and expense and tax reporting and reports and, security settings. And again, you can run the whole thing from your mobile device.
Yeah, in fact, in another context, they claimed not only did they have the 50 plus modules, 55 is the most common number we saw quoted by Zoho, but they had over 100 mobile apps that were integrated seamlessly into their system. And they did use some statistics of mobile phones globally, including US and Africa. And I thought those statistics were fantastic enough that I actually took pictures of them. I said, these are really good, particularly if I can back those up. But another product that just got my attention, and if I had one motivation for this podcast episode for you today, it'd be to make sure you knew about Zoho Start. Zoho has gone to the trouble of supporting their idea of from seed to tree. Now, again, remember, they are very small business focused, and they want to do everything they can to help small business form. And Zoho Start now supports all 50 states for formation of LLCs. And for a very small fee, typically it's the filing fees at the Fed or states, they can now file all documentation for formation and get a tax ID in all 50 states.
Now the tax ID, I think, is $50. Don't spend it all in one place.
Exactly. But that's the fee that they're charging. They're not really charging anything that I could tell for the platform itself. Now, I might be wrong on that, but bottom line was I watched the formation process, and our demonstrator did the entire process end to end in about 2 minutes. So think about how many businesses out there should be properly formed. Now, they've started with LLCs. Their intent was to get all 50 states working so they knew how to make things connect. And then they're going to form the other types of businesses, the sub-S's, the partnerships, and so forth across the various states. But I thought that was a really significant step forward in terms of the Start product.
I think it's quite interesting that they've layered that into the Zoho suite so that you can, so that you're starting the application and you have all your business data in there, and then you have all your reporting out of it. And again, they're really making it into, honestly, since they have CRM and all the other things in Zoho One, it is a infinitely more complete platform, especially at the Zoho One level, than what you'll have with pretty much anything mid-market. And for the entry level folks, the nice thing is you can start out with Zoho Start and Zoho Solo for solopreneurs, and then you can graduate up to stuff that are just literally supported in organizations with millions of employees that, again, in the Zoho One suite.
Yeah, so, they did make a few other announcements or improvements in products. Some of these products have been around and they expanded them. For example, the Zoho Biggin product was very interesting, light duty pipeline CRM class product. It maintained all of the contacts in the system and the companies and actually products and so forth. I mean, you could run an entire business off of Biggin. And what also then happened was Biggin was connected to another new product called Contracts. Now, contracts are just starting out. There's a lot more to be done on this, but it's a doggone good start. And the contracts are set up that you can actually do a draft of the contract, get it approved, go back and forth, negotiate it, get it signed, and make it active. And I ask about various, capabilities in the platform during my one-on-one meeting about the contract manager. And, some things were in there that I expected, some were not. But it was clear that you could do all of what I would call your legal paperwork here, including e-signatures with the Zoho sign, which was included as part of the contract. So you could do NDAs, for example, or you could actually do business contracts. And you could also do employment agreements, for example. So anything that would be associated with onboarding an employee and all of the supporting documentation there.
And workflow automation for these. So you can have your approval process in here, and you can actually configure it where there are multi-layer approvals as well as different approvals for different paths. So pretty interesting tool.
Yeah, and they started with a variety of different documents, and they included templates for software licenses, product sales, reseller agreements, e-commerce, vendor agreements, non-disclosures, master services agreements, and so forth. And really, they were just trying to show how the cycle time was so much quicker with these types of automated contract tools. And the forms that they could create were fillable by fields, which were extracted from the Zoho systems. So just like you're used to mail merge in, let's say, Microsoft Office, these are automatically drag and drop field capabilities inside this system. So think of it as kind of a report writer with automated fields with verification. So you actually have legally binding contracts. And what was fascinating in the discussion around this is they talked about how in most countries in the world, the contracts were needed in the legal systems. Whereas, here in the United States, we have places where we need them, but we're not quite as adamant about having a contract in place. But they were quite adamant about how that worked in so many countries. And it's like, well, that's fascinating because as accounting professionals, of course, we always want engagement letters in place, but many industries just don't have these binding contracts. And particularly at the small business level, that just didn't happen. Well, one other interesting product that they released, and there were some more, but we just want to pull a few that I thought were useful right away, was the Zoho Notebook product. Now, many of you have used OneNote and all of the other competitors. And in our K2 business, we've taught a lot of these notebook class products. But the meeting notes here was a little different take on it because they had a built-in audio transcription of the meeting, and it was more like an AI meeting tool. The audio clip was recorded with the minutes, but it kind of did a script and a next action plan and who attended and all those types of things. And in the meeting minutes, for example, in a notebook, it would take you to that point in the minutes so you could go back and listen to the speaker on that topic. I thought that was pretty doggone useful in terms of style. So
I will say that I've been using Otter for some time, and that capability, which is also present in the tricked out version of Teams, where it will transcribe the meeting and take the notes and summarize it for you, is really been just a godsend for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brian. And another thing in the platform that I thought was interesting was how you could get the major topics in a tree map, including who was talking about those items. So it got the concepts mapped in a meeting discussion very rapidly and automatically, which is probably important as well. And they also had personal spaces. So, this would be, very similar to some of the capabilities that we're seeing built out in Microsoft Office suites as well. And Zoom has some things like this and so forth. So anyway, the notebook piece, though, is included inside their system. Another thing that is a competitive piece, many of you have used Calendly or other bookings, those types of products that we've talked about in prior podcasts, but they also have now a booking page inside their notebook and meetings platform. So you really, the way I like to think about Zoho, they find a problem and solve it. They make everything work both computer, browser-based, and mobile-based, so you can watch end-to-end workflows inside these systems, if you will. So it doesn't matter whether you're mobile-centric, iPad-centric, or computer-centric in the approach. And the other thing that they have worked on is their integration with products like QuickBooks, so their invoices can flow through or their payroll can flow through. So you may have a transition capability here that you've not seen in any of these other platforms. So that really brings us back again to the Big product, because it really is an end-to-end workflow for your startup clients, and it integrates into the notebook platform as well. So when we start looking at how Zoho is going to morph the small business platform, I think they may have the platform of choice for startups and the most automations to make everything easy for you, the professional, to do for the small business clients. So Zoho's biggest shortfall, as I see it right now, is awareness. There's so much of their tools that if the market figures out that they have them, they'll get used. But maybe because of today's accounting technology lab, you will become aware, and you might make clients aware. So Brian, any other things that we learned from our visits at SMZ or the Balance in San Antonio and Utah?
Well, the pace at which they're doing development is going up pretty significantly. And part of that is honestly because they're using AI to write some of the code or to clean up some of the code. And again, they've got literally probably hundreds of millions of lines of code at this point across all their platforms. And so it's really pretty amazing some of the things that they've been able to do with that tool set. We didn't really talk as much about the Zoho Finance Suite as we possibly could have. But I will say that when you start looking at their finance suite, it has books, which is a very competitive, I would probably say kind of, you can use it for small business, but it goes further upscale. In fact, they said that Zoho Books is actually used internally by Zoho. Their subscription billing platform is perfect for people that are setting up these recurring revenue model businesses, where your card gets charged automatically. An example that might be my car wash that I go to, where I pay basically $20 a month and I can go through as much as I want. The invoice product I've talked about a little bit earlier, but again, it is free for everybody. And it also has merchant service integrations that you can work with. The expense management product, I've always thought of as the gateway for the Zoho Finance Suite. Interestingly, there are free versions of just about all of these products that you could use with things. There's also a Zoho payment solution in here, as well as Zoho inventory, the commerce tool we talked about, and the whole suite of low code, no code integration tools and workflow creation tools in here. So there's a whole lot in the world of Zoho. And the biggest challenge, I think, for new users to Zoho is really just figuring out how to get your arms around it, okay? Because it's a lot of stuff, and figuring out the Venn diagram for what goes where and how it integrates together is sometimes a little bit difficult. So it's a journey, but literally they have tools that you could replace literally everything you need. They have a meeting tool, they have an event management tool, they have CRM. They have a remote access and support management tool. They have a ticket tracking tool. They have literally everything you could imagine. Plus, and you may be nervous about them having not heard of them, but anybody that's dealing with enterprises has definitely heard of them because they also own Manage Engine, which is it's used in big, serious enterprise IT, and their directory is used in big, serious enterprise IT all day, every day. And in fact, they actually operate their own data centers and cages inside big data centers. They don't actually use public clouds at all for their stuff. So their equipment is all segregated from other places, and they're very serious about privacy. In this age of AI, one of the things we all worry about is getting our data pimped out by somebody to create, more detailed marketing profiles of you or leak your sensitive data or other things like that. The people inside of Zoho can't even look at their customer data without you granting them permission inside the support app. And then it's only for that small period of time. So I don't think you have to worry about folks snooping around if they're doing what they say they're going to do in their privacy policy. So there's a lot of great stuff about Zoho that I think people need to consider as they're trying to figure out what their solutions are going to be.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, Brian, they're running Zoho Books internally, and they have 20,000 plus employees globally. So this is no small company.
I didn't even talk about their multi-client interface for accounting firms. That's kind of equivalent, kind of similar to QBOA or some of the other multi-client tools called Zoho Practice. They've literally got 60 something applications, and they all do amazing things.
Yeah. So if you want to learn about that, go to zoho.com/CPA. That'll be a great place to see it. Well, we appreciate you listening in today. We'll talk to you again soon in another Accounting Technology Lab. You have a good day.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.